A girl in a wheelchair disappeared at a water park, leaving her family desperate for answers. But 7 years later, a maintenance worker drains an old pool, and what he finds makes his blood run cold. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Emily Thompson's adapted bedroom, illuminating the unicorn posters and cartoon heroines that adorned her walls. 8-year-old Emily was already awake, her bright eyes focused on her father as he helped her through her morning physical therapy exercises. "Remember to breathe through it, princess," Mark Thompson said, gently stretching his daughter's thin leg. At 42, the lines around his eyes had deepened from years of early mornings like this one. "Dad, do you think they'll have those special floating chairs at the water park?" Emily asked, her voice barely betraying the discomfort of the stretches. "Jenny Rodriguez said they have ones where kids like me can feel like we're swimming by ourselves." Mark smiled, his heart swelling with familiar pride at his daughter's resilience. Despite the infantile paralysis that had confined her to a wheelchair since she was 3, Emily approached life with a determination that continually amazed everyone around her. "The website said they have all kinds of adaptive equipment," he assured her. "Today is your day, remember? Your reward for that perfect report card." In the kitchen downstairs, Jennifer Thompson meticulously packed a cooler with specially prepared snacks. At 40, she moved with the efficiency of someone who had spent years organizing her life around her child's needs. She double-checked her list: medications, extra towels, high SPF sunscreen, emergency contact information. "Mom," Jason called from the living room. "Do I have to stay with Emily the whole time? Tyler said he might be there with his family too." Jennifer sighed, looking up at her 12-year-old son. "We're going as a family, Jason. But yes, you'll have some time to meet up with friends." The sound of wheels on hardwood announced Emily's arrival as Mark pushed her wheelchair into the kitchen. Emily's chair was a riot of color, decorated with sparkling star stickers and unicorn decals that she applied herself, transforming the medical necessity into a personal statement. "Watch this, Jason," Emily called, grabbing her wheels and executing a perfect spin in the hallway. "I've been practicing. The park attendant won't have to help me much." Jason rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. "Just don't splash me when you get in the water, Squirt." 3 months earlier, the Thompson family had attended a school assembly where Emily received an Academic Excellence Award. Mark still remembered the mixture of pride and anger he felt watching other parents' faces, the subtle shifts from admiration to pity when they noticed Emily's wheelchair. His daughter had the highest grades in her class, despite missing school regularly for medical appointments. "Everyone buckled up?" Mark asked as he started their minivan that had been specially adapted with a wheelchair ramp. The July morning was already promising scorching temperatures, typical for Dallas in summer. Emily sang along to every song on the radio during the drive, her excitement building with each mile. Jennifer periodically turned in her seat to review the safety rules. "Remember, both of you stay within sight of either your father or me at all times," she insisted. "Emily, you know the drill. No going near water without one of us right there." "I know, Mom," Emily sighed with the exaggerated patience of a child who had heard the same instructions countless times. As they pulled into the Splash Kingdom parking lot, Emily pressed her face against the window. Her eyes widened at the sight of another family helping a boy about her age, from his wheelchair into a modified stroller designed for water parks. "Look, Dad, there's another kid like me," she exclaimed, the simple observation revealing how rarely she encountered children with similar challenges. The security cameras at the entrance captured the Thompson family at precisely 11:23 in the morning, Jennifer guiding Emily's wheelchair, Mark carrying a large backpack of supplies, and Jason trailing slightly behind, already scanning the crowds for his friends. Emily pointed excitedly at the park map, her finger tracing the accessible areas marked with special symbols. "Can we go to the Wave Rider first?" she asked, referring to one of the specially designed attractions for children with mobility issues. The morning passed in a blur of joy. A trained attendant helped transfer Emily to an aquatic wheelchair in one of the adapted areas. Mark watched, his throat tight with emotion, as his daughter experienced the sensation of floating independently for the first time. Her laughter carried across the water, drawing smiles from nearby families. Around 12:30, the Thompsons gathered at a picnic table for lunch. Emily's hair, cut in a practical bob, was still damp as she enthusiastically recounted her adventures. "And then the water came from everywhere," she explained, her hands moving animatedly as she described one of the accessible water features. "It didn't even matter that I can't move my legs because the water moved me." At 12:45, after changing into a dry purple swimsuit with ruffles, Emily returned to her personal wheelchair. The family decided to explore the shallow pool area next, making their way through the increasingly crowded park. Jennifer suddenly stopped, patting her pockets. "I forgot the sunscreen in the car," she said, frowning at Emily's fair skin, already showing signs of pinkness despite the morning application. "I'll be right back to get it." She looked directly at her husband. "I'll be back in 2 minutes. Mark, don't take your eyes off the children," she said, her words later recalled with painful precision in numerous police statements. Mark nodded, positioning Emily's wheelchair in the shade of a large umbrella next to a picnic table. Just as Jennifer disappeared into the crowd, Jason tugged urgently at his father's sleeve. "Dad, I need to go to the bathroom now," he said, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. Mark hesitated, glancing between his son and daughter. The bathrooms were visible from where they stood, barely 30 yards away. The area was crowded with families and monitored by lifeguards. It would take 2 minutes, at most. Kneeling in front of Emily's wheelchair, Mark looked directly into her eyes. "Princess, I'm going to take Jason to the bathroom really quick. Stay right here under this umbrella. Don't move until we get back. Understood?" Emily nodded confidently, her hands already busy adjusting the unicorn-shaped charm on her bracelet. "Yes, Daddy. I'll just watch the kids in the wave pool. Can we go there after?" "We'll see," Mark replied, standing up. 2 minutes, I promise." The last clear image of Emily captured on security footage at 12:47 showed her alone near the entrance to the shallow pool area, curiously observing other children in the wave pool just a few meters away. 3 minutes later, Jennifer returned, sunscreen firmly clutched in her hand, but the picnic table under the umbrella was empty. No sign of Emily or her unicorn-decorated wheelchair anywhere, just a small purple hat fallen on the hot concrete ground. Jennifer stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the empty space where Emily had been just minutes before. Her heart skipped a beat as she spun in a slow circle, scanning the crowded area. "Emily, Emily, where are you, sweetheart?" she called, her voice initially calm but quickly rising with panic. People nearby began to notice her distress, a few parents glancing around while holding their own children closer. Jennifer's eyes darted frantically across the shallow pool area, searching for the familiar purple swimsuit and decorated wheelchair. The sunscreen bottle slipped from her fingers, forgotten on the hot concrete. Mark and Jason emerged from the bathroom entrance, smiling until they saw Jennifer's face. She ran toward them, her eyes wild. "You took her? Did you move Emily?" she demanded, grabbing Mark's arms. The color drained from Mark's face. "No, she was right here. I left her right here under the umbrella." "She's gone, Mark. She's gone." Jennifer's voice cracked with the beginning of hysteria. The next moments dissolved into chaos. Mark sprinted in one direction, shouting Emily's name, while Jennifer raced in another. Jason remained rooted to the spot, his young face contorted with confusion and fear. "Emily!" Mark's voice boomed over the ambient noise of splashing water and laughing children. "Emily!" Within minutes, their panic attracted the attention of a lifeguard who immediately radioed his supervisor. Trevor Wilson, the 53-year-old park manager, responded swiftly, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he assessed the situation and activated the park's emergency protocol. "Attention all teams, we have a code yellow. Repeat, code yellow. Female child, 8 years old, wheelchair, main pool area." Wilson's steady voice announced through the staff radio system at precisely 1:05 in the afternoon. The well-rehearsed machinery of the missing child protocol sprang into action. Security guards moved quickly to all exit points, checking each family attempting to leave. Staff members formed systematic search lines, methodically checking every bathroom stall, every changing area, every conceivable space where a child might wander or hide. "She can't have gone far," one security guard reassured Jennifer. "Children in wheelchairs are very noticeable." But as minutes stretched into a full hour with no sign of Emily, that reassurance rang increasingly hollow. At 1:40 in the afternoon, Sergeant Diana Rodriguez arrived, her police cruiser's lights flashing in the parking lot. 38 years old with 15 years on the force, Rodriguez had handled missing children cases before, but something about this one immediately struck her as unusual. "A child in a wheelchair doesn't just vanish," she muttered to her partner as they established a perimeter with police tape and coordinated with the park's security team. Mark sat in the security office, his face ashen as he watched the security footage with increasingly desperate hope. The camera clearly showed Emily sitting alone at 12:47, looking curiously toward the wave pool. Then, at 12:51, the screen went black. "What happened to the feed?" he demanded, pointing at the monitor. The security technician shook his head apologetically. "System glitch. Happens sometimes when the system overheats. We lost about 20 minutes of footage across all cameras." In another room, Jennifer sat rigidly in a chair, mechanically answering a detective's questions, while clutching Emily's small purple hat to her chest. Her responses were precise, almost clinical, as though maintaining this facade of calm was the only thing preventing complete collapse. No, she cannot move without her wheelchair. No, she would not go with a stranger willingly. Yes, she takes medication 3 times daily. No, she cannot survive long without it. Each answer seemed to drain more color from her face. Meanwhile, a female officer specially trained in interviewing children gently questioned Jason in a separate room. "How long were you in the bathroom, Jason?" she asked kindly. The 12-year-old boy twisted his hands in his lap. "Not long. 3 minutes, maybe? Dad was rushing me." "Did you see anyone suspicious around the bathroom or on your way there?" Jason shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. "Is this my fault, because I had to go to the bathroom?" By 3:30 in the afternoon, Detective Chief Sarah Moore arrived, assuming command of the rapidly expanding investigation. At 45, Moore had established herself as the department's leading expert in missing children cases. Her expression remained carefully neutral as she reviewed the initial evidence and established a command post in the administrative office. "We have an extremely unusual situation here," Moore stated during her first press briefing, her voice carrying across the now-closed water park. "A child in a wheelchair doesn't simply disappear without leaving traces. Someone saw something." As the afternoon faded into evening, park employee Tyler Jenkins, a 22-year-old lifeguard, provided the first potentially significant lead during his interview. "I think I saw a girl matching her description being taken by a woman toward the female changing rooms," he said hesitantly, "but I'm not sure if she was in a wheelchair." "Why didn't you intervene?" Detective Moore pressed. Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. "I assumed it was a mother helping her daughter. It's common here." As darkness fell over Dallas, volunteer teams with flashlights continued searching areas adjacent to the park. Inside the makeshift command center, the Thompson family waited in agonizing limbo. At 11:15 at night, Jennifer Thompson, her eyes swollen from crying, made an emotional appeal on local television. "Emily needs her medications," she said, her voice breaking. "She can't survive long without them. Please, if anyone has seen her, if anyone has any information, no matter how small, our daughter is not just a missing child on a poster. She's our entire world." Mark sat beside his wife during the interview, barely able to speak, clutching Emily's small purple backpack with her medications as if it were the last link to his missing daughter. While the studio lights dimmed and the Thompsons were escorted back to the water park where the search continued, a solitary figure in a hotel room watched the interview on television, finger hovering over the remote's power button before muttering, "Damn, it wasn't supposed to happen like this," and then quickly dialing a number on a disposable phone. The mysterious caller hung up the disposable phone, leaving behind a web of conspiracy that would soon unfold around Emily's disappearance. As dawn broke over Dallas, the early morning sunlight did nothing to dispel the growing dread surrounding the Splash Kingdom water park. Helicopter blades chopped through the humid Texas air, their rhythmic thumping a constant reminder of the urgency that gripped the search operation. Below, teams of police officers and volunteers assembled in the parking lot, preparing for another day of searching with diminished hope but unwavering determination. Inside a stuffy conference room that had been transformed into the investigation's nerve center, Detective Sarah Moore stood before her team at 6:30 sharp, surrounded by the visual tapestry of an investigation in full swing. A whiteboard behind her displayed Emily's school photo, timeline notes, and detailed maps of the water park and surrounding areas. "We have a critical 24-hour window that's closing," Moore announced, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "We need to expand the search perimeter to 5 miles. Every minute counts now." The team nodded grimly, all too aware of the statistics regarding missing children and time. Moore's phone rang, interrupting the briefing with news that would elevate the case further. FBI Special Agent Richard Calloway arrived at the command post at 8:15, his presence marking the federal government's official interest in Emily's disappearance. At 49, Calloway carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had seen too many similar cases. "Dallas requested our assistance due to the nature of the disappearance and the victim's vulnerability," he explained as he shook Detective Moore's hand. "The Bureau is particularly concerned about the child's medical needs." 3 miles away, in a hotel room near the park where the Thompson family had been relocated, Jennifer sat perched on the edge of a hastily made bed. Her eyes were fixed on the morning news broadcast showing Emily's smiling face alongside the hotline number for information. The reporter's voice droned on about the mysterious disappearance, while Jennifer stared at her daughter's frozen smile, a smile she feared she might never see again. In the adjoining bathroom, Mark had locked himself away, unable to face his wife or son. He stared at his haggard reflection, the red-rimmed eyes of a man who hadn't slept, whispering a mantra of self-condemnation. "My fault. It was only 3 minutes. My fault," he repeated, his knuckles white as he gripped the porcelain sink. Jason sat alone in a corner of the hotel room, silently playing on his tablet. Though his fingers moved across the screen, his eyes frequently darted toward the bathroom door and to his mother. The game merely a pretense of normalcy in a world suddenly turned upside down. Back at the water park, the parking lot had transformed into an impromptu volunteer center. Hundreds of local residents signed registration forms, donning bright yellow t-shirts emblazoned with Emily's photo. Mothers with strollers, college students, and retirees stood shoulder to shoulder, united by the universal instinct to protect a child in danger. Inside a mobile FBI lab parked discreetly at the edge of the lot, technical specialists huddled around monitors displaying the recovered security footage. A technician pointed to the screen where the image cut to black. "This doesn't look like a common technical failure," she explained to Agent Calloway. "The pattern suggests someone deliberately disconnected the system. The timing is too convenient." Meanwhile, Tyler Jenkins found himself being re-interviewed in a small, windowless room. The young lifeguard sweated visibly as Calloway and Moore pressed him for more detailed information. "I really can't be sure it was her," Jenkins insisted, wiping his palms on his shorts. "I was busy watching the main pool. There were so many kids that day." By midday, Jennifer Thompson stood before a forest of microphones, giving her first official press conference. Despite her exhaustion, her voice remained steady, her spine straight as steel. "Emily is strong, stronger than any adult I know," she told the cameras, her words reaching living rooms across the country. "She's out there somewhere, and we will find her." As the day progressed, Detective Moore found herself in the maintenance office, poring over the park's maintenance records with the chief technician. Her finger traced a line in the documentation that raised immediate red flags. "So you're telling me the system was upgraded the week before without any complete testing?" she asked, her tone making it clear this wasn't merely casual interest. Across the park, Trevor Wilson sat in his office, visibly nervous as he spoke quietly into his phone, unaware that his conversation would soon become evidence. "They're asking for all the records, Elliot. All of them. Including the wave pool maintenance ones," he whispered, glancing frequently toward his closed door. Outside the park perimeter, volunteers formed a human chain, slowly walking through a wooded area adjacent to Splash Kingdom. They called Emily's name as they checked every bush and ditch, their voices creating a somber chorus that drifted across the property. In a separate interview room, Mark Thompson broke down while speaking with an FBI forensic psychologist. His composure finally shattered completely as he confronted the moment that had changed everything. "I only turned my back for 3 minutes. 3 minutes," he sobbed, his hands trembling. How could someone take a child in a wheelchair so quickly? As sunset approached, a specialized dive team entered the main pool, powerful lights illuminating the water as they searched for any clues in the depths and drainage systems. Their solemn faces as they emerged told their own story. Nothing found, but the search would continue. At the end of the second day, when hope was beginning to falter and many volunteers were heading home, a maintenance worker named Carlos Mendez approached Detective Moore nervously, pulling her aside to a quiet corner, away from the cameras and curious onlookers. "That wave pool," he whispered, constantly looking over his shoulder. "There was a serious accident there last month that got covered up, and I think Mr. Wilson is hiding something about the drainage system." Detective Moore's eyes widened at Carlos Mendez's revelation. "Tell me everything," she said, guiding him toward a more private area as the search teams dispersed for the night. Early the next morning, Moore and Agent Calloway met Carlos Mendez at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Splash Kingdom, away from prying eyes and potential eavesdroppers. The 45-year-old maintenance worker nervously clutched his coffee cup, repeatedly checking over his shoulder before speaking. "I was fired 3 weeks ago for insubordination," Mendez explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the real reason was that I questioned the new motors they installed in the wave pool. They increased the power by almost 3 times without upgrading the safety systems." Calloway leaned forward. "Do you have any documentation of these modifications?" "Some," Mendez nodded. "I took photos on my personal phone before they fired me. I knew something wasn't right." Armed with this new information, investigators secured an emergency warrant to conduct a detailed inspection of the wave pool drainage system. By mid-morning, forensic technicians in coveralls descended through access hatches into the now emptied wave pool, equipped with specialized cameras and lighting equipment. At the hotel, Jennifer meticulously arranged Emily's medications on the dresser, organizing the pills and solutions in perfect rows as though preparing for her daughter's imminent return. The television droned in the background, each news update adding to the surreal nightmare that had become their reality. In the hallway outside their room, Mark sat alone on the carpet, his back against the wall, as he spoke quietly into his phone. "I don't know when I can come back," he told his boss, his voice hollow. "How can I even think about work right now?" The call ended, and Mark buried his face in his hands, the weight of guilt crushing him from within. Each passing hour without Emily made their brief separation, those 3 fateful minutes, feel increasingly unforgivable. At the park, Municipal Safety Inspector George Ramirez, a stern 51-year-old with 25 years of experience, spread the original blueprints of the wave pool across a table as Detective Moore looked on. "These modifications were never submitted to the department for approval," Ramirez stated, pointing to several marked sections. "They would have been rejected outright for failing to meet safety codes. The increased pump power creates suction points that are extremely dangerous." As Ramirez explained the technical violations, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the park's administrative entrance. Elliot Conrad, the 58-year-old operations director of Splash Kingdom's parent company, emerged impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. 2 corporate attorneys flanked him as he strode purposefully toward the building. ignoring shouted questions from reporters gathered behind police lines. That night, the Thompsons' fragile attempt at rest was shattered at 3 a.m. when Jason woke up screaming. Jennifer rushed to her son's bedside, gathering the boy in her arms as he sobbed uncontrollably. "I dreamed she was calling me from underwater," Jason choked out between sobs. "But I couldn't reach her. I tried, Mom. I tried to grab her hand." Jennifer held her son tightly, her own tears falling silently as she confronted a horrifying possibility she had refused to consider until now. The next morning, Detective Moore confronted Trevor Wilson in an interview room, slapping a folder of maintenance documents on the table between them. "This report shows the pump power was increased by 270% without proper safety adaptations," she said, her voice sharp with controlled anger. "Explain this." Wilson's eyes darted toward the door as though seeking escape. "Those were corporate-approved upgrades to enhance the Wave experience. I just implemented what they ordered." While this interview proceeded, forensic technicians made their first significant discovery. A technician called over the team leader, pointing to something caught in the main filtration grate. Camera flashes illuminated the scene as they documented and collected a small, colorful fiber trapped between the metal bars. That evening, Jennifer participated in a candlelight vigil organized by the local community. Hundreds of people gathered in front of the park, many carrying posters with Emily's smiling face. The sea of flickering lights reflected in Jennifer's tears as she addressed the crowd, thanking them for their support and refusing to give up hope. Inside a conference room at the command center, corporate attorney Bernard Stevens, a polished 62-year-old with silver hair and a practiced smile, attempted to control the narrative. "My clients are fully cooperating," he assured the investigators. "But we need to ensure this investigation doesn't unduly damage the reputation of a respected business that serves thousands of families safely every year." Agent Calloway merely stared back, unimpressed. "Our concern is finding Emily Thompson, not protecting corporate interests." Outside in the parking lot, Mark encountered a group of parents with disabled children who had traveled from neighboring cities to offer support. A woman in her 40s approached him, her own daughter in a wheelchair beside her. "It's not your fault," she said simply, embracing him as he broke down in tears. "Any one of us could be in your place. We all look away for a moment sometimes." In the lab, a technician showed Moore and Calloway a preliminary analysis of the fiber found in the filtration system. "This fiber appears to match the type of material used in pediatric wheelchair manufacturing," she explained. "Specifically, the kind of decorative covering used for customized models." Carlos Mendez later showed investigators photos on his personal tablet documenting structural cracks near the drainage grates. "They covered these flaws with quick-set concrete before an inspection last year," he explained. "The whole system is compromised." As day 3 of the search ended, Agent Calloway reviewed partially recovered security footage, noticing an unusual movement in the wave pool water precisely at the moment when the cameras failed. When the inspection team finally accessed the main chamber of the wave pool drainage system, their flashlights illuminated something caught between the primary filter grates, a small, water-damaged unicorn sticker identical to those that decorated Emily's wheelchair. The unicorn sticker gleamed under the harsh beam of the technician's flashlight, its once vibrant colors now faded from water damage. The discovery sent an electric current through the investigation team. What had begun as a search for a missing child was rapidly transforming into something far more sinister. "Bag it," ordered Detective Moore, her voice tight with emotion. "Full documentation. I want photos from every angle before it's removed." The technician carefully extracted the small sticker using precision tweezers, placing it in an evidence bag with the reverence usually reserved for more substantial findings. In this case, the tiny unicorn represented the first tangible connection to Emily Thompson since her disappearance 3 days earlier. By dawn, the command center buzzed with renewed energy. Agent Calloway called an emergency meeting, formally assuming federal leadership of the case. As of this moment, we're treating this as a federal criminal investigation, he announced to the assembled team of local police and FBI personnel. This entire water park is now a crime scene. I want every inch of that drainage system mapped, photographed, and examined. Outside the police perimeter, a CNN reporter stood with the illuminated Splash Kingdom sign visible in the background, delivering the breaking news to a national audience that had become increasingly captivated by Emily's disappearance. Sources close to the investigation confirm that evidence found in the drainage system may be connected to the disappearance of Emily Thompson, the reporter stated solemnly. While authorities have not released specific details, this development suggests the search may be taking a tragic turn. In her hotel room, Jennifer Thompson froze as she watched the report, the remote control slipping from her fingers. The controlled composure she had maintained for the cameras shattered as the implication of the news washed over her. Her face transformed from shock to a fury so intense it seemed to physically alter her features. Without a word, she grabbed her car keys and rushed toward the door, determined to demand answers directly from those in charge. Across town, Mark received the news via a phone call as he walked alone through the hotel parking lot, seeking temporary escape from the suffocating atmosphere of their room. His legs buckled at the information, sending him to his knees on the rough asphalt. A passing hotel guest rushed to his side as Mark began to hyperventilate, his body finally betraying the emotional devastation he had been fighting to contain. At police headquarters, Trevor Wilson sat in an interrogation room, visibly sweating as Detective Moore placed photos of the unicorn sticker on the table before him. "I don't know how that got there," Wilson insisted, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "The filtration system is cleaned regularly. That could have been placed there at any time." In another interrogation room, Elliot Conrad presented a stark contrast to Wilson's nervous demeanor. Impeccably dressed, despite the early hour, the operations director maintained a composed expression as his attorney sat vigilantly at his side. "Splash Kingdom has always prioritized visitor safety," Conrad stated with practiced precision. "These allegations are premature and potentially defamatory. My client's company has an exemplary safety record." The diplomatic facade at the command center cracked when Jennifer Thompson arrived, her eyes blazing with maternal fury. A young officer attempted to block her path, explaining that the area was restricted. "My daughter has been missing for 3 days, and you're telling me now that she might have had an accident in that pool." Jennifer's voice escalated to a shout that carried through the entire building. "You will tell me exactly what you found, or so help me God, I will tear this place apart with my bare hands." Meanwhile, emergency medical technicians loaded Mark into an ambulance outside the hotel. A physician gently explained the situation to Jennifer when she arrived, having been summoned from the command center. "Your husband experienced a severe panic attack," the doctor said. "We're going to keep him under observation tonight. His blood pressure is dangerously elevated." Jennifer nodded mechanically, torn between staying with Mark and returning to the investigation headquarters where answers about Emily might emerge. Back at the command center, Agent Calloway and Detective Moore reviewed employee attendance records from the day of Emily's disappearance, discovering that 3 maintenance workers had been logged as working specifically in the wave pool area during the camera system failure. Alone in the hotel room, Jason sat cross-legged on his bed, searching online for accidents in pools and how children survive in water. His young face, streaked with dried tears, illuminated by the blue glow of his tablet screen, reflected a desperate attempt to understand what might have happened to his sister. Corporate damage control arrived via private jet that afternoon. Executives from Leisure Ventures, Splash Kingdom's parent company, descended from the aircraft at Dallas Executive Airport, quickly entering waiting black SUVs with tinted windows. Jennifer's meeting with Dr. Hoffman, the FBI psychologist, later that day brought the conversation she had been desperately avoiding. "Mrs. Thompson," he said gently, "we need you to prepare for the possibility that Emily may not be found alive." Jennifer stared at him, her face a mask of determination. Until you show me proof, my daughter is alive, period. The forensic team's continued examination of the drainage system yielded more evidence. Small purple fabric fibers, matching the color of Emily's swimsuit, trapped in a damaged section of the protective grate. The mounting evidence finally broke Trevor Wilson's resistance during an intensified interrogation session. As Agent Calloway methodically laid out potential charges including negligent homicide and obstruction of justice, fear visibly overtook the park manager's features. He glanced desperately at his attorney before lowering his eyes to the table. "It was an accident," Wilson whispered, avoiding eye contact. "Nobody was supposed to get hurt. But Elliot said we'd lose everything if the truth came out." Wilson's confession reverberated through the investigation room, his words hanging in the air like a death knell. Detective Moore and Agent Calloway exchanged meaningful glances, understanding they were finally breaking through the wall of silence surrounding Emily's disappearance. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened," Calloway said, leaning forward. "Not what you think happened, but what you know." Wilson shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his attorney, who gave a slight nod. "There was an issue with the wave pumps that day. We were testing unauthorized modifications to the wave system. I wasn't directly involved, but Elliot told me to handle the situation after he received a call from someone in maintenance." "And what exactly was the situation you were handling?" Moore pressed. "I honestly don't know the full details about the girl," Wilson insisted, his voice trembling. "I was told there was an incident and that corporate couldn't afford a scandal. I just followed orders." The partial confession triggered a new phase of the investigation. While forensic teams continued the complex process of fully draining the extensive pump system, investigators turned their focus to interviewing every maintenance worker who had been on duty that day. Jennifer Thompson, her grief temporarily transmuted into fierce determination, began forming alliances that would later prove crucial. In a small cafe 3 blocks from Splash Kingdom, she sat at a corner table with Carlos Mendez and 4 other former employees who had agreed to speak with her. "I need to know everything," Jennifer said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Even things you think might be insignificant. Something you saw, conversations you overheard, anything unusual about that day or the wave pool in general." One by one, the former employees shared stories of corner cutting, of safety concerns dismissed, of a corporate culture that prioritized profit over precaution. Their testimonies painted a damning picture of systematic negligence that extended far beyond a single tragic incident. While Jennifer channeled her anguish into action, Mark Thompson existed in a state of emotional paralysis. Released from the hospital, but prescribed powerful anti-anxiety medication, he spent hours sitting motionless on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at Emily's purple backpack, unable to process the possibility that his daughter might never return to claim it. When Jennifer entered their room that evening, Mark didn't acknowledge her presence. The growing chasm between their different ways of coping had begun to form a rift that would eventually prove insurmountable. The following morning, a social worker accompanied Jason to the airport, where he would catch a flight to his maternal grandparents' home in Ohio. The 12-year-old clung to his mother during their goodbye, his young face etched with a confusion and pain no child should have to bear. "You'll call me when they find Emily, won't you, Mom?" he asked, his voice small and fragile. Jennifer embraced him tightly, fighting back tears. "The very second, I promise. Your grandparents will take good care of you until we bring her home." She couldn't bring herself to speak the other possibility aloud, not to her son, not yet. The national media had fully embraced the story by this point. A Fox News reporter stood before the closed Splash Kingdom gates, the wind whipping her hair as she delivered her report. Sources indicate that Splash Kingdom may have operated with unapproved modifications to their equipment, potentially placing disabled children at risk. The Thompson family continues to demand answers about 8-year-old Emily's disappearance 4 days ago. Later that afternoon, dozens of families gathered outside the park entrance in a demonstration organized by the newly formed Coalition for Safe and Accessible Parks. Many brought their own children in wheelchairs, holding signs demanding justice for Emily and better safety regulations for all amusement facilities. The corporate response came swiftly. Attorneys representing Leisure Ventures held a press conference in downtown Dallas, their carefully crafted statement designed to distance the parent company from any wrongdoing. "We are cooperating fully with authorities in this tragic situation," stated senior counsel Douglas Freeman. "However, we categorically reject premature allegations of negligence or criminal activity. We ask the public to allow the investigation to proceed based on facts, not speculation." Detective Moore spent that evening reviewing financial documents obtained through warrant, discovering that the wave pool modification had been implemented specifically to save money, sacrificing multiple safety redundancies in the process. They increased pump power by nearly 300%, but didn't upgrade the safety grates or emergency shutoff systems, she explained to Callaway, pointing to highlighted sections of the technical documents. The cost-cutting measures saved them approximately $200,000 across their 5 locations. The community's initial outpouring of support began showing signs of fracture as the investigation continued into its 6th day. Jennifer encountered a small group of local residents protesting outside the command center, their signs complaining about excessive use of public resources on a single case. She approached them directly, her dignity intact despite her exhaustion. "If it was your daughter, would you feel the same way?" she asked quietly, leaving the protesters momentarily speechless. That night, in a tense conference room at the Dallas Marriott, executives from Leisure Ventures met with their legal team to discuss strategy. The gravity of the situation was becoming increasingly clear. "We need to consider a settlement," advised senior counsel Freeman, his tone grave. "If this goes to trial, the financial consequences will be catastrophic, not just the damages, but the stock devaluation and loss of consumer confidence." While powerful interests deliberated her daughter's value in dollars and cents, Jennifer created an impromptu shrine in her hotel room, a wall covered with photos of Emily at different ages, smiling from her decorated wheelchair, receiving academic awards, playing with Jason. She studied each image intently, as though searching for clues, even as the evidence increasingly pointed toward tragedy. On the morning of the 6th day, when the drainage operation finally reached the deepest chamber of the system, a forensic technician emerged pale-faced from the access hatch, motioning for Agent Callaway to approach. He whispered something in the agent's ear that made the experienced FBI agent briefly close his eyes before ordering, "Secure the entire perimeter. We've found remains." Callaway's order echoed across the drainage inspection site as officers quickly established a wider security perimeter. The atmosphere shifted instantly from investigative determination to somber reverence. Technicians moved with deliberate care, documenting the position of Emily's remains before any attempt at recovery could begin. In the cramped, dimly lit chamber beneath the wave pool, forensic photographer Sarah Jimenez captured image after image, her professional demeanor briefly cracking as she turned away, removing her mask to take several deep breaths. The small, partial remains told a horrific story of what had happened to Emily Thompson, a story of mechanical force, entrapment, and ultimately death. The suction created by the modified pumps would have been impossible for an adult to resist, let alone a child, explained Dr. Raymond Nichols, the medical examiner who arrived on scene within the hour. Death would have been rapid, likely within seconds of entrapment. Agent Callaway and Detective Moore retreated to a private office to prepare for the most difficult conversation of their careers. They sat in silence for several minutes, both veterans of terrible cases involving children, yet visibly affected by what they had discovered. "We need to tell them in person," Moore said finally. "Not over the phone, not through a messenger." Later that afternoon, Jennifer and Mark Thompson were brought to a private room at their hotel. The moment Callaway and Moore entered, Jennifer knew. A mother's intuition recognized the specific gravity in their expressions, a look she had prayed she would never see. "We've found remains that we believe belong to Emily," Calloway said gently, holding Jennifer's hand as Moore sat beside Mark. "We'll need formal DNA confirmation, but the evidence at the scene is consistent with Emily's description." Jennifer remained motionless for several seconds, processing the words as though they were in a foreign language. Then came a primal scream of anguish that staff would later report hearing from 3 floors away. She collapsed to her knees, her body convulsing with grief, while Mark sat completely still, staring vacantly as though his mind had simply shut down. At FBI headquarters, the investigation team gathered with federal prosecutors to review the mounting evidence against Splash Kingdom's management. The unauthorized modification increased suction power by almost 300%, explained forensic engineer Alicia Morales, pointing to technical diagrams. The protective grate was damaged in at least 2 places and had never been repaired despite documentation showing management was aware of the issue. It was, as we call it in engineering, a perfect storm of negligence. The corporate damage control machine moved into high gear as news of the discovery leaked to the press. A spokesperson for Leisure Ventures appeared before a forest of microphones outside their regional office. "We are deeply saddened by this tragic development," he read from a prepared statement. The modifications in question were made without knowledge or authorization from corporate leadership. These were rogue actions by individual employees acting outside company protocols. The attempt to shift blame infuriated investigators, especially as Elliot Conrad finally broke during his 5th hour of interrogation that evening. "When we learned about the accident, I panicked," Conrad admitted, his polished exterior finally crumbling. "We had just signed a $50 million expansion contract. If this became public, we would lose everything. The shareholders, the board, they wouldn't survive the scandal." Conrad's confession revealed the calculated nature of the cover-up. "We moved quickly before the police locked down the scene completely. While everyone was searching the park and surrounding areas, we concealed her remains in a remote section of the system that's rarely accessed." While investigators built their case against those responsible, Jennifer underwent her own transformation. Alone in the hotel bathroom, she stood before the mirror, methodically cutting off her long brown hair with a pair of scissors. Tears streamed silently down her face as locks fell into the sink, the physical change somehow necessary to mark the division between her life before and after Emily's death. Mark responded differently, seeking oblivion at a bar near the hotel. He sat hunched over his 6th whiskey, ignoring the repeated calls from Jennifer lighting up his phone, watching news of his daughter's case playing on the television above the bar with detached numbness. Their son Jason returned to Dallas with his grandparents the following day, running toward Jennifer in the hotel lobby before stopping abruptly, shocked by her transformed appearance. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice trembling. "She's dead?" Jennifer could only nod, kneeling to embrace her son as they both sobbed, while Mark stood awkwardly to the side, emotionally unreachable even in this moment of shared grief. In the coming days, investigators methodically built their case, interviewing every person connected to the wave pool's operation and the subsequent cover-up. Trevor Wilson, confronted with Conrad's detailed confession, completely broke down. "I just followed orders," he sobbed. "He said we'd lose our jobs, our homes, said it was an accident, nobody would be blamed." Late that night, Jennifer knelt alone in the hospital chapel, her hands clenched in prayer, or perhaps rage. "I will never forgive them, never. And I don't know if I can forgive ourselves." Hours later, she found Mark sitting on a park bench at 3 a.m, drunk and disheveled. "She was my responsibility," he slurred. "I left her alone. How can I live with that?" The investigation reached a critical turning point when the Thompsons' attorney, Daniel Morales, secured a court order compelling the engineering firm that designed the wave pool to release their original plans and all modifications made between 2010 and 2013. The preliminary analysis revealed numerous unauthorized alterations to the drainage system. On the night when DNA results officially confirmed the remains belonged to Emily, Jennifer received an anonymous call from a low-level administrative employee at Leisure Ventures. I have documents proving the parent company knew about the unsafe modifications in all their parks for years. There are internal memos calculating that it would be cheaper to deal with occasional lawsuits than to fix all the parks. The anonymous call sent a chill down Jennifer's spine as she clutched the phone tightly. Internal memos calculating human lives against profit margins. It was beyond heartless. She immediately contacted Daniel Morales, who moved quickly to subpoena these crucial documents before they could be destroyed. 1 year later, the Dallas County Courthouse buzzed with tension as the criminal trial of those responsible for Emily's death and the subsequent cover-up finally began. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating Jennifer Thompson as she took the witness stand. Her once long hair now remained in the short, practical style she had cut in grief, and her eyes held a determined fire as she faced Elliot Conrad and Trevor Wilson across the courtroom. "Could you describe for the jury how Emily's loss has affected your family?" asked federal prosecutor Andrea Lopez. Jennifer's voice remained steady despite the emotion behind her words. "Emily wasn't just our daughter. She was our teacher, showing us how to face challenges with grace. Her absence has left a void that nothing can fill. Not justice, not time, not anything." 3 months earlier, they had finally laid Emily to rest. The small white casket decorated with unicorn decals stood in stark contrast to the sea of mourners dressed in black. Mark and Jennifer had sat in the front row, separated by an empty chair between them, a physical manifestation of the gulf that had grown in their relationship. In the courtroom, Prosecutor Lopez played a restored security video showing Emily's final moments. The footage, recovered through painstaking technical work, showed the 8-year-old girl alone near the wave pool's edge, curiously watching other children play, before being suddenly pulled backward when the pumps activated. The jury visibly recoiled at the sight, several members wiping away tears. Across town that evening, Mark Thompson spoke for the first time at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the podium. "My name is Mark, and I lost my daughter and my marriage because I believed 3 minutes wouldn't make a difference," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've been trying to drown my guilt for a year, but it just keeps floating back up." Back in the courtroom the following day, forensic engineer Diane Williams used detailed diagrams to explain the technical aspects of the tragedy to the jury. The modification to the propulsion system created a suction vortex powerful enough to pull in an adult, let alone a small child in a lightweight wheelchair, she explained. The force would have been impossible for Emily to resist once it grabbed her chair. Public interest in the case had grown exponentially. Jennifer appeared on CBS's 60 Minutes in a special report about corporate negligence and disability rights. "This isn't just my daughter's story," she told the interviewer, composed despite her grief. "It's about how corporations value profits above human lives, especially the lives of people with disabilities. Emily's death was preventable at so many points." Meanwhile, 13-year-old Jason Thompson sat in his weekly therapy session, obsessively drawing pools with monsters lurking at the bottom. His therapist watched with concern as he added dark swirls to represent the deadly current that had taken his sister. "Do you still feel responsible for what happened?" his therapist asked gently. "If I hadn't needed to go to the bathroom," Jason began, before trailing off into silence. The prosecution's case strengthened dramatically when they played a recorded deposition from an anonymous Leisure Ventures executive. With face obscured and voice altered, the insider confirmed what the leaked documents had suggested. It was unwritten company policy to implement economical upgrades that we knew didn't meet safety standards, the disguised figure explained. Risk assessment calculated that settlements for occasional incidents would cost less than properly upgrading all facilities. Outside the courtroom, Mark and Jennifer met at a neutral cafe to discuss legal proceedings, the tension between them palpable. They reviewed documents together, focusing solely on the case while carefully avoiding any mention of their crumbling personal relationship. "The prosecutor thinks we'll get a verdict by the end of next week," Jennifer said, not meeting Mark's eyes. Mark nodded, staring at his untouched coffee. "Good. That's good." The impact of Emily's case extended beyond the courtroom. At the Texas state capitol, Jennifer received an award for her advocacy work, presenting the first draft of Emily's Law to legislators who had been moved by the case to strengthen safety regulations for children with disabilities. The defense strategy took an ugly turn when Conrad's attorney attempted to shift blame during cross-examination. Mr. Thompson admitted to leaving his daughter alone, violating the park's express policies regarding constant supervision of children with special needs, the lawyer argued, causing Jennifer to grip the gallery railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. As the trial progressed, Jennifer continued building the foundation that had become her life's purpose. She visited a family in Georgia whose disabled son had survived a similar accident, connecting through their shared experiences and gathering more evidence of systematic safety failures across multiple parks. At a contentious Dallas City Council public hearing, Jennifer confronted amusement park industry representatives directly. "How many children need to die before safety becomes the priority?" she demanded, her voice carrying across the chamber. After months on medical leave, Mark returned to his accounting firm, where colleagues walked on eggshells around him. He placed a small framed photo of Emily on his desk, a silent reminder of what he had lost through what he considered his unforgivable lapse in judgment. In her closing argument, Prosecutor Lopez held up Emily's small purple backpack as material evidence. Emily Thompson trusted the adults around her to keep her safe. Everyone failed her. Her parents through a moment of inattention, but the defendants through years of deliberate negligence and then days of calculated cover-up. On the eve of the verdict, as Jennifer prepared her notes for the planned press conference the following day, she received an anonymous envelope containing a never-before-seen photo of Emily smiling in her wheelchair at the park moments before her disappearance, with a handwritten note, "It's not too late to accept a settlement. There's much more at stake than you imagine." Jennifer stared at the anonymous photograph, a chill running through her body. This wasn't just a threat. It was proof that someone with intimate knowledge of the case was attempting to manipulate the outcome. She immediately called Agent Calloway, her hands shaking with both rage and determination. "They're still trying to intimidate me," Jennifer said the next morning, sliding the photo and note across the table to Calloway in a meeting room adjacent to the courthouse. "This only proves there are more people involved than we know." Agent Calloway studied the photograph carefully. "This was taken from an angle not covered by any of the security footage we recovered. Someone was watching Emily specifically." The courthouse filled quickly that morning, the gallery packed with journalists, disability rights advocates, and families supporting the Thompsons. Judge Nathan Clark called the court to order, his voice resonating through the suddenly silent room. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" he asked, looking toward the jury forewoman, a retired schoolteacher who had taken copious notes throughout the trial. "We have, Your Honor," she replied, handing a folded paper to the bailiff. The silence in the courtroom became absolute as Judge Clark unfolded the paper. Jennifer reached backward, surprised to feel Mark's hand grip hers from the row behind. Despite their separation, in this moment, they were united by a shared need for justice. In the case of United States versus Conrad et al., the jury finds the defendant, Elliot Conrad, guilty on all counts, the judge read, his voice steady and clear. The courtroom remained silent as he continued reading the verdicts for each defendant. All 7 were found guilty on all charges. Only when the final verdict was read did the emotional dam break. Jennifer covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Behind her, Mark let tears stream down his face without bothering to wipe them away. Across the courtroom, Elliot Conrad was being handcuffed by court officers. For a brief moment, his eyes met Jennifer's, a fleeting connection across the gulf of unimaginable pain he had caused. Something passed between them, not forgiveness, but a recognition of the irreversible truth that bound them together forever. Outside on the courthouse steps, Jennifer faced a wall of cameras and microphones, Emily's wheelchair positioned beside her, a powerful visual reminder of what had been lost. "Today is not about vengeance," she stated, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "It's about accountability and ensuring no other family endures what we have experienced. Emily's law must become a reality in every state, so her death serves as a watershed moment for safety and accessibility." 2 weeks later, Mark and Jennifer met in their old backyard, sitting on the swing set where Emily had spent countless hours. The spring flowers were blooming, Emily's favorites, making her absence feel even more acute. "I can't stay here, Jen," Mark said softly, staring at the empty swing that still held Emily's shape in his mind. "Every corner, every park, everything reminds me of her and my failure." Jennifer nodded slowly. "I understand, I do. But I can't leave. This is where I feel closest to her, where I can continue her legacy." Across town, Jason helped volunteers unpack boxes at the newly established Emily Foundation headquarters, a modest building in downtown Dallas that had quickly become the center of a growing national movement. The 13-year-old had found purpose in supporting his mother's mission, even as he continued to process his own grief. "Where do you want these pamphlets, Mom?" he called as Jennifer arrived to inspect the new office. "By the front desk, honey. People should see them first thing when they walk in." That evening, Mark stood in his nearly empty apartment, surrounded by packed boxes. His new job in Colorado would begin next month, a fresh start geographically, if not emotionally. As he carefully wrapped the last few items, his hands stopped at Emily's favorite stuffed unicorn. After a moment's hesitation, he set it aside, deciding to leave it with Jennifer. The Emily Foundation's first board meeting convened the following week. Jennifer stood before a diverse group of disability advocates, safety engineers, and bereaved parents who had lost children in similar preventable accidents. "We're going to audit every water park in all 50 states for compliance with safety and accessibility standards," she announced, revealing plans far more ambitious than anyone had anticipated. "And when we find violations, and we will find them, we'll use every legal tool available to force compliance." The media coverage of the case had created unprecedented momentum. A Texas state senator appeared on television announcing the unanimous passage of Emily's Law, a comprehensive bill requiring strict safety standards for recreational facilities serving children with disabilities. At the site of the former Splash Kingdom, permanently closed after the trial, Jennifer stood with city officials unveiling plans for what would become Emily Thompson Memorial Park, a fully accessible recreational space designed with input from disability experts. Meanwhile, Mark prepared for his departure, saying goodbye to Jason in an emotional moment in the driveway of Jennifer's new home. "You can visit me anytime you want," Mark promised, hugging his son tightly. "This doesn't change how much I love you." "I know, Dad," Jason replied, struggling to be strong. "I'll come for spring break." 2 years after the verdict, during the groundbreaking ceremony for the Emily Thompson Memorial Park, Jennifer's phone rang. Stepping away from the crowd, she answered to hear the urgent voice of Daniel Morales, their attorney. "Leisure Ventures is filing a lawsuit to block construction of the memorial," he explained hurriedly. "They're claiming new evidence has emerged, suggesting the Thompson family had prior knowledge that Emily shouldn't use that specific pool due to her condition, a last desperate attempt to rewrite history." Jennifer's attorney paused after delivering the news about Leisure Ventures' desperate lawsuit, allowing her to process yet another battle ahead. 5 years had passed since Emily disappeared from Splash Kingdom, yet the fight for justice and accountability continued to evolve in unexpected ways. "They're grasping at straws," Jennifer replied firmly. "Let them try to rewrite history. We have truth on our side." That truth had become her anchor through half a decade of grief, advocacy, and transformation. On a crisp morning in April 2018, Jennifer Thompson walked confidently into a congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C., carrying a leather portfolio emblazoned with the Emily Foundation logo. The room fell silent as she took her seat at the witness table, adjusting the microphone with practiced ease. "My name is Jennifer Thompson," she began, her voice steady. "5 years ago, my 8-year-old daughter Emily died because a corporation valued profit over children's safety. I'm here today to ensure her death was not in vain." The Congresswoman chairing the committee leaned forward. "Ms. Thompson, your advocacy has already changed laws in 37 states. What do you hope this federal legislation will accomplish?" "Emily's law will create unified national standards for accessibility and safety in recreational facilities," Jennifer explained. "No more patchwork regulations that allow corporations to exploit loopholes across state lines." In a Dallas courtroom across the country, the hearing to dismiss Leisure Ventures' lawsuit against the Memorial Park was reaching its conclusion. Judge Maria Sanchez made no attempt to hide her contempt for the corporation's tactics. "This court finds this action a transparent attempt to rewrite established history and an affront to the memory of a deceased child," she declared, banging her gavel with finality. "Case dismissed with prejudice." Daniel Morales immediately called Jennifer with the news, interrupting her lunch break at the congressional hearing. She closed her eyes briefly in relief before returning to prepare for her afternoon testimony. The legal victory was bolstered the following week when Gregory Palmer, a former high-level executive at Leisure Ventures, came forward with devastating testimony about the company's practices. "It was unofficial policy to ignore accessibility-related complaints," Palmer stated during a deposition. "We considered the disabled customer segment statistically insignificant to the bottom line." His testimony prompted renewed investigations into the company's other properties and eventually led to its bankruptcy and dissolution. Corporate justice to complement the criminal sentences already being served by Elliot Conrad and the others. At Dallas International Airport, Mark Thompson stepped off a plane for the first time in 3 years, nervously clutching a small wrapped package. He had built a new life in Colorado, working as an accountant for a nonprofit organization serving children with disabilities, his own form of atonement. Though therapy had helped him manage his depression and guilt, returning to Dallas awakened dormant emotions he had carefully compartmentalized. Jennifer welcomed him at the foundation office, now a substantial operation with dozens of employees. A large map of the United States dominated one wall, colorful pins marking water parks that had been audited or were scheduled for inspection. "Your work is making a real difference," Mark said, observing the busy staff moving purposefully through the office. Their conversation was interrupted when Jason burst in, waving an envelope enthusiastically. "I got in. University of Texas Law School accepted me." At 17, Jason had grown into a thoughtful young man, his early trauma channeled into determined purpose. "I'm going to specialize in civil disability law, just like you always suggested," he told Jennifer, who embraced him with fierce pride. The following day, hundreds gathered for the inaugural ceremony of Emily Thompson Memorial Park. The mayor of Dallas stood at a podium before a diverse crowd that included many children in wheelchairs. Jennifer watched from nearby, emotions washing over her as the reality of this moment, impossible to imagine 5 years earlier, took physical form. When Mark approached to stand beside her, they shared an awkward moment before embracing cautiously. Jason watched hopefully from a few steps away, seeing his parents together for the first time in years. After the ribbon cutting, Jennifer led a tour through the fully accessible park. At its center stood a bronze statue of Emily in her wheelchair, smiling, surrounded by stylized unicorns, a permanent reminder of the vibrant child whose life had been cut short. "This is the splash zone," Jennifer explained as they approached a colorful water play area. "Every feature is fully accessible, with transfer stations for children to move from wheelchairs to water attractions independently." That evening, Mark and Jennifer sat on a bench watching the sunset over the park, observing children with various disabilities playing safely in the specially designed aquatic areas. "You've created something extraordinary from unimaginable pain," Mark said quietly. Jennifer nodded, It doesn't bring her back, nothing will, but it gives her life continued meaning. Back at the Foundation headquarters, Jason led a group of law students through an exhibition detailing Emily's case and its legislative impacts, explaining how a single tragedy had catalyzed national change. As dusk fell on the park's opening day, Jennifer remained behind after the crowds departed. She sat beside the bronze statue of Emily, gently touching the cold metal hand that would never grow warm. "You changed the world, sweetheart," she whispered. "Not in the way we hoped, but you changed it." As Jennifer placed Emily's original restored wheelchair in a glass display case at the center of the memorial, she noticed a small boy in a modern wheelchair watching intently. When their eyes met, he smiled and said, "Thank you for making this place safe for us." A powerful reminder that Emily's legacy would continue to protect countless children who would never know her name, but whose safety would be her enduring memorial.